Thanks for visiting the patient and the weather today. I'm meteorologist Al Peterlin. I'd like to talk about the weather health stresses for May 29th, 2026. We keep additional graphics at tpatw.com. We also maintain a patient weather storefront on Amazon. Looking at the surface map for Friday, a little bit of complexity for this time of the spring or early summer. We have low pressure up in the Pacific Northwest, low pressure in the Northeast, and a little bit of a bubble high right through the heartland. And meteorologists call this an omega high. It's a nice way to say that things have been pretty stationary. We do have a massive complex frontal system stretching all the way from the Pacific Northwest, across down into Oklahoma, back over into Tennessee, swinging into the Carolinas, and then bubbling down towards Atlanta. So what we end up with is a lot of unsettled weather in the Pacific Northwest, unsettled weather in the Northeast, a really soggy mess in the South, and a little bit of activity trying to push up into the plains. Looking at our vitality index, which is a measure of just those elements that might have an impact on human health, and you can see we have a lot going on here in the Pacific Northwest, a little bit going on here in California, bubbly type stuff, or a piece here and there up and down the plains. We still have something going on in the South, but not dramatically, shall we say, violent, and then we have some lingering up here in the Northeast. Pressure change, of course, is always important, and we have rising pressure from Northern California across into Oregon, Washington, and on up into Vancouver. We have falling pressure here in the Central Plains, basically Kansas up into Nebraska, touching portions of South Dakota, and right along the ridge here where the states join. Up in the north, we have falling pressure from Wisconsin across Michigan, all the way across Pennsylvania into New York, and up into the, call it the more western portions of New England, Vermont, New Hampshire, and probably touching down into Massachusetts. Looking at temperature changes, we're going to keep some of those very high temperatures up in Montana. However, you can see that we have some falling temperatures here in the Pacific Northwest, a little bit of bubble high up in here from the close to the Kansas up into Nebraska, especially at the Panhandle. Dew point temperatures a little bit all over the place. We're trying to have some increase in dew points across portions of the west, but then again, as you get into the Pacific Northwest, falling dew points. Not a lot going on here in the east. And you can see that even our lifted index, which is a measure of instability in the atmosphere, we still have some in the south ahead of that frontal system, but really not as dramatic as the recent past. The more interesting map, and it almost looks like modern art, is the change in oxygen availability in the atmosphere. And you'll see that we have migraine stresses here from Northern California across Oregon, Washington, up into Vancouver, trying to make its way here into Idaho. But note that we have significant migraine stresses here across Utah. We also have a very narrow line of migraine stresses running from North Dakota through the easternmost portions of South Dakota, just picking up the westernmost edges of Iowa, down into eastern Missouri, southern Illinois, cutting across western Tennessee, into northern Alabama and Georgia, and back up into the Carolinas. We do have a little bit of migraine stresses here in upstate New York. Note, however, on the asthma and arthritis stresses, we have a very sharp risk of asthma and arthritis stress across central California, and then another rather broad line of asthma arthritis stresses across the panhandle of Nebraska, down through Kansas and Oklahoma, touching its way into Arkansas, Louisiana, and then along the Gulf, the Florida panhandle, and all the way down to southern Florida. We also have another area of asthma and arthritis stresses across Wisconsin, down into northern Indiana, northern Illinois, across Ohio, Pennsylvania, and across into New Jersey. A little bit of asthma and arthritis stresses here in Maine. Thanks for visiting the patient and the weather. Your comments are appreciated, and if you hurt, tell us where you're located.